Dear Heavenly Father, we're gathered here in your name. We hope you open our hearts, our minds. We hope you let us hear good things about our country and help us to be better citizens. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm proud to be a Republican in South Carolina. I'm proud to be a Republican in Berkeley County. I believe this county is one of the best bellwether counties for picking the Republican presidential nominee. Berkeley County voted for Newt Gingrich, and Newt Gingrich won South Carolina. Berkeley County voted for John McCain in 2008. John McCain won South Carolina. In 2000, George W. Bush won Berkeley County and narrowly won South Carolina. Dole in 96 won Berkeley County, and on and on. In Berkeley County, we take advantage of our status of the first primary in the South. I can attest to you that Senator Rand Paul likewise takes serious our status. Over the past few months, I've spoken to the senator by phone. I've been in personal meetings with him. I've joined him in town halls and now join him at the best political breakfast in the state of South Carolina. Senator Rand Paul is a serious candidate that takes Berkeley County and South Carolina extremely serious. Speaking of serious, he's the only candidate that has offered a comprehensive fix to our tax problem. And that fix involves a chainsaw. He's the only candidate that stuck up for our Republican primary out of the back 2 nights ago, defended this process, and defended the fact that no matter what, we need a Republican in the White House in 2016. Thank you, Senator. What I've come to learn about the senator is that he has a legion of die-hard fans and supporters. Thus, an introduction is probably a little pointless. But nevertheless, let me hit some highlights. Dr. Paul was elected to the Senate in 2010 and is one of the nation's foremost advocates for liberty. Just ask Chris Christie. He's a devoted husband to Kelly, who spent time with us last month in Month's Corner, and a father of 3. He is an accomplished eye surgeon who still practices and takes his work overseas to help those less fortunate. Recently, he conducted over 200 surgeries in Guatemala to help those blinded by cataract see. Mr. Senator, it is my fervent prayer that you will have the opportunity to give sight to Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen of Berkeley County, please help me in welcoming United States Senator Rand Paul.
Thank you. Sometimes people ask me, why would you go from one of the most respected professions, being a physician, to one of the least respected professions in Washington? I ask myself the same question often. But really, when I ran for office, I tell people I got just tired of throwing stuff at my TV. Like many of you, I was upset with what goes on in Washington. I was upset with them piling on billions and billions and now trillions of dollars of debt. And people said, well, was it the Democrats that made you mad? And I said, well, they always make me mad. But really, it was the fact that I kept working in campaigns year after year in my small community to elect Republicans, and then I was uniformly disappointed. You know, I was disappointed by the fact that when we got in charge of the White House, we doubled the debt. I was disappointed that when Republicans were in charge, we bailed out the banks. Where does it say anything in the Constitution about bailing out the banks? Where is anybody going to come into your community, here in your county, and bail out any of your businesses? There's no reason the government should be involved with bailing out the big banks. We don't need to be the party of the big banks. So I was coaching my, I tell people I'll answer any question except for what my Little League coaching record is. But in 2009, I was coaching Little League baseball, and my middle son, they were the Astros, and we were okay. We won a few, we lost a few. But I was coaching, they asked me, do you want to come down and talk to this group that's going to be gathered on the square? And I said, well, what is this? And they said, it's a Tea Party group. And this was at the very beginning, you know, it was 2008, 2009. And I said, well, sure, I'll come down there. And I left the Little League game, and I said, I'll be back in 20 minutes. It'll probably be 15 people there. Well, I got to the square in my small town, and there were 800 people in the square. 800 people that were worried about the future of their country, worried about the debt, worried about the size of government, worried that we might destroy the currency paying for this mess. Worried that we were borrowing money from China to send it to Pakistan. Truly concerned people. And I looked around and I looked for those people who were supportive of the Tea Party. And you know what? I can't even imagine Donald Trump being there. I can't imagine Donald Trump even knowing what a Tea Party is. How could we have Tea Party conservatives in our country think that somehow Donald Trump's going to help us? He's the consummate insider. What's wrong with Washington? People buying and selling politicians. What's Donald Trump known for? Buying and selling politicians. What did he say to the Wall Street Journal the other day? He said, well, I give them money so they'll do what the hell I tell them to do. Really? Is that what we want? Is that part of what represents the Tea Party? Is that what represents conservatives? My goodness, he's been on both sides of every issue. Where is our sense? Where's our common sense? This is a guy that's been pro-choice before he was pro-life. This is a guy that was liberal before he was conservative. This is a guy that was a Democrat before he was a Republican, before he was a Democrat, before he was an independent, before he was back to being a Republican. I have no idea if he's conservative. We are kidding ourselves to even consider someone who is such a chameleon that he's been on every side of every issue. Wake up, America. Wake up, Republicans. All right, I'm a little bit annoyed, all right? Here's the thing. Does anybody remember when Ross Perot gave us Bill Clinton?
Yeah.
Well, are you ready for Donald Trump to give us Hillary Clinton?
No.
We want somebody that will stand up to the Washington machine. We want someone who will speak their piece. We want somebody who's not bound by political correctness, but we also want them to make sense, don't we?
Yeah.
Do we want border security? Yes. Do we want to have the ability to protect our country from just unlawful, mass migration? Yes. But do we want someone that has maybe something a little more intelligent to say than the Mexicans are going to pay for it?
Yeah.
My goodness, is anybody listening to what's being said? We have a $19 trillion debt. What are we going to do? Mexicans will pay for it. That doesn't make any sense. What we have to do is talk about how we're going to make our country better again. But we make our country better again by paying attention to the Constitution. The Constitution wasn't to restrain you, it was to restrain your government.
Yeah.
Let's have a debate in our country about where the money is better spent. Is the money better spent leaving it in South Carolina or sending it to Washington? If so, let's be the party of Reagan, which was for cutting taxes, for returning the money to the people, and shrinking, starving the beast in Washington, shrinking it and lowering taxes. I've looked at the tax code, 70,000 pages of it. It's chasing American jobs. It's chasing American companies overseas. Everybody laments the loss of jobs. Everybody says the jobs are going overseas. We're losing our manufacturing base. Much of this is true. Why? Because money goes where it's welcome. We've made money and business unwelcome in our country. Burger King's reincorporated in Canada. I tell people I'm embarrassed that Canada has a cheaper tax code, a lower tax code than us. We have the highest taxes in the world. 35% corporate income tax. Canada, 15. Ireland, 12. France, which is half or more socialized, 20. They all have lower taxes than us. We're losing business because our taxes are too high. In Washington, what passes for bold? There isn't a Republican up there. I take that back. There's not a Republican in leadership up there who wants to cut your taxes or cut the size of government. Do you know what they're all for? And this is everybody that's in charge of the tax committees in the House and the Senate. They're for revenue neutral tax reform. You know what that means? Half of you pay more, half of you pay less, and the net result will be nothing. They're not going to return any money to you. They're just going to keep the taxes and shift the burden. I tell them, look, if that's what we're for, I'm going home. I got better things to do than to go up to Washington and just for keeping the status quo. I say we have to be what we're for. We need to be more boldly for what we're for. Smaller government and lower taxes. Ronald Reagan was the last nominee we had that was for that. We haven't had a nominee in a generation for the Republicans that was for lowering taxes. Let's be the party of small government again. Let's shrink the size of government. I'm proposing to get rid of the entire tax code, the IRS, the whole damn thing. I would replace it with one single rate, 14.5% for business, 14.5% for businesses. And then I'd do one thing that no one's proposed. The Democrats will all say, well, if you're going to be for a flat tax, that's only going to be for the rich. My flat tax will also get rid of the payroll tax. No more FICA, no more workers' tax. You might say, well, who's going to pay for Social Security? And that's a good question. It'll come out of the business tax. The businesses will pay all of it. And so if you make $40,000 a year, you don't pay much in income tax. But you do pay about $2,000 in payroll tax. It will now be paid by the business. The workers won't pay it. And so when we get to a general election against Hillary Clinton, we're going to say to every American, working class, business class, or owners, that we're going to cut your taxes, we're going to shrink the size of government, and we're going to expand the job base by leaving the money in the community and never sending it to Washington to begin with. Some people, let's say young people for example, don't yet have jobs, don't yet have money, don't yet have businesses. They don't care about taxes so much. They don't care about regulations. How are we going to get young people to come back to the Republican Party? 3 out of 4 young people voted for President Obama. Young people have tended and trended Democrat in recent years. How do we get them back? I think we have to have a spirited and an aggressive and an enthusiastic defense of the Bill of Rights. The entire Bill of Rights. All of their liberty, and know that we are going to defend it. Every young person you meet has a cell phone these days. I have 3 teenage boys. Their whole life they communicate. Everything is through their cell phone. The internet, everything comes through their cell phone. They don't understand why the government would have to look at their phone records. They don't understand why the government would look at their phone records without any suspicion they've done anything wrong. And some people will say, they'll say, well, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. I said, that's kind of a step down, isn't it, from innocent until proven guilty. People think you have to have done something wrong to want to protect your privacy. I couldn't disagree more.
That's right.
Think about it. Think about it, who you are and what you do. Think about whether you teach your kids at home, or whether you're an evangelical Christian, or whether you just simply have an unorthodox idea like believing in the Constitution. You can be a minority for a lot of different reasons. The Bill of Rights is about defending and protecting minority rights. And people say, well, I'm not a minority. Well, you can be a minority because of the color of your skin or the shade of your ideology. You can be a minority because you have an unorthodox idea, because you believe in the Constitution, because you believe in balancing the budget, because you're Jewish or evangelical Christian, or any number of reasons why you can be a minority. But that's what the Bill of Rights is about. That's what the Bill of Rights is about, protecting the least among us. I tell people the Bill of Rights isn't so much for the prom queen or for the high school quarterback, although it's for them also. It's about the least among us. It's about those who might dare to be different, those who might dare to have an exceptional and extraordinary thought that isn't what the majority thinks. There is a danger in our country, though, that as we say and we combat and we try to get to keep those who might attack us from attacking us, that we give up on who we are. We give up on the principles that founded this great country. We've been having this debate. We had it the other night. And the question is, how do we stop those who would attack us? And my response was, I want to get the records. I'm all for surveillance of those who want to attack us, of those for whom we have suspicion, for those that we individualize and name. Let's get more records of terrorists, but less records of all the innocent Americans. Malcolm Gladwell's a popular author, and he writes about how good decision-making isn't about knowledge, it's about understanding. It's about understanding the information you have. If we're collecting all the phone records of 300 million Americans, maybe we're getting lost in the information. Maybe when we're collecting the records of all Americans, we somehow forget to follow up on the boy that's visiting Chechnya that the Russians tipped us off might become the Boston bomber. Maybe we're not paying enough attention to suspicion. Maybe we're not paying enough attention to individualizing who might attack us. Every person that has attacked us within the United States, we have had some suspicion in advance. Sad thing is we haven't stopped one of them. The Garland shooter we knew about. Major Hassan had been making radical statements in the military for a decade or more. The guy that was the Fort Hood shooter. What did we do? Because of political correctness, we just kept promoting him. The one thing that's true about your government, and even now your military, nobody gets fired. Because of such a obeisance to political correctness, nobody gets fired. The VA scandal, we had people waiting in line, we had people perhaps dying waiting in line, and you had VA officials falsifying the records. No one was fired. We looked to fire them and they said, you can't fire them. They're government officials. It's ridiculous. So we passed a law to say we could fire them, and we fired one person over it. 9/11, no one was ever fired. People say, oh, we needed the Patriot Act, we need all this expansive surveillance state. Do you know that we captured the 20th hijacker a month before 9/11? His name was Moussaoui. We had him in Minnesota. He was to be the 20th hijacker. Did we need special powers? Nobody ever. The FBI agent wrote 70 letters to headquarters saying, let's look at his records. Nobody looked at it. It was a breakdown of somebody not doing their job. So what did we do? We gave a medal to the FBI director and the CIA director who really did a crummy job. We gave them all medals and rewarded them. Nobody was fired. Recently we had a shutdown in government. And I tell people the good news and the bad news. Good news is the government's back open. The bad news is your government's back open. But when we had this shutdown, we went through some of the roles of government, and they asked us to determine who is essential and who is unessential. And I thought, well, my goodness, we're going to learn something here. We're going to find out what parts of government we need and what parts of government we don't need. So they sent us a list, and we actually had to list each congressional office who's essential and who's unessential. So I said, this is great, let's discover something. And so I said, call the IRS. Find out how many are essential and unessential. 90% unessential. So I said, call the EPA. Let's find out the EPA. Essential, unessential. 95% unessential. And I thought, we're really going to learn something here. Most of our government's unessential. Maybe if we shut it down and don't reopen it, we could actually balance the budget. But then I learned very quickly that nothing is what it seems in Washington. I learned that, do you know what happens during a government shutdown? If you're unessential, you don't have to come to work, but you still get paid. It's actually cheaper, it's actually more expensive to have your government closed than open because they keep paying people. This is what's wrong with your government. There is no common sense up there. So I've become thoroughly convinced after seeing the people up there that there's no monopoly of knowledge. That there are many people among you who could represent the government just as well as others. And I think the only way to fix it is let's send them all home. Let's have term limits for everything. People ask me, what's the worst thing that President Obama has done to the country? And I say, how long do you have? But it's not Obamacare. As horrendous as Obamacare is, it's not just Obamacare. It's not the banking regulations. It's not even the debt per se. But it's the constellation of all of it taken together. And really what's destroying the country is Obama's suppression or collapse of the separation of powers. Our founding fathers had such great forethought when they made co-equal branches of government. Congress was supposed to be equal to the presidency. It was supposed to be equal to the judiciary. And Madison said that what we would do is pit ambition against ambition. The ambition of Congress to have more power would be pitted against the president's ambition to have more power, and there would be an equilibrium or a check and balance. That's being destroyed. The president says he can't get his way, so he's got a phone, and he's got his pen, and he's just going to do what he wants. That sounds more like a third world autocrat than it does somebody else. But when we look at the checks and balances, what's happened is really not just with this president. It's happened over 100 years. It's happened under Republican presidents as well. We've let too much power gravitate to the presidency, and really Congress is a bystander now. Congress has made themselves insignificant, and we've abdicated our duties and abdicated our power as the presidency's grown larger and larger. The most important rules and laws are not voted on by Congress. The most expensive regulations costing billions and billions of dollars to the economy. In fact, regulations cost you $2 trillion a year. These are being passed by unelected bureaucrats, people you don't vote for. Even Obamacare, it was 2,000 pages. Remember Nancy Pelosi said you could read it after we passed it. It gets worse though. The 2,000 pages became 20,000 pages of regulations. All the rules are being written by unelected bureaucrats. If I am elected president, I will take it as my main goal, the thing I will start from day one to the very last day, and that's to give power back to the people and back to Congress. There have been a lot of scandals in this administration. I think of the old McDonald's farm ride. Here a scandal, there a scandal, everywhere a scandal. But the one that probably bothers me the worst is the scandal of Benghazi. In the media, most of the discussion was about this film, which had nothing to do with it, and the spinning and the deceiving and all of the misdirection that you got from the Obama administration, including Hillary Clinton. But that's not the real story, and that's not what upsets me most. For 9 months in advance of Benghazi, they begged for protection. They begged for more security, and they were denied, time and time again. And some of it was part of this political correctness, because you heard from the soldiers that were in Libya to protect the ambassador. They were told not to carry their guns. They were told not to wear their military-style boots because it might offend the Libyan freedom fighters. Do you know who the Libyan freedom fighters are? They're jihadists, radical Islamists, and people who hate us, who we put in power. This is the thing about our foreign policy. There's going to be a debate, hopefully, ultimately, on the national stage about what direction we take in our foreign policy. Hillary's war in Libya made us less safe. It made Libya a disaster. It made Libya a failed state. A third of Libya now pledges allegiance to ISIS. We should have never been involved in Libya. We should have never toppled Gaddafi because we made things worse. When we look at foreign policy, we should try to first do no harm. That means that we should think before we act. The whole debacle in Libya got started on a false premise, that we could somehow create some great nation in Libya and it would be better off. We are less safe now because of this. If there's one true thing in the Middle East, it's that every time a secular dictator has been toppled, we get chaos and the rise of radical Islam. But it hasn't just been Obama and Hillary wanting the war in Libya. Some in our party were like, oh, we just need to do more. We need to have troops on the ground, boots on the ground in Libya. We need to bomb Assad. We need to bomb both sides. We need to bomb ISIS and Assad simultaneously in Syria. Really? You think it's good advice to bomb both sides in a war? There are 2 million Christians in Syria. Ask one of them, ask any one of them who they would rather have in charge, Assad or ISIS. You won't get one vote for ISIS among the Syrian Christians. So why in the world would we bomb Assad? Is Assad a great guy? No, he gassed his people too. He's a terrible autocrat. Don't give him money, don't give him arms. But don't give arms to the other side either. It's completely crazy. We've been sending arms to the allies of ISIS. ISIS now rides around in $1 billion worth of U.S. Humvees that you paid for. It boils my blood that we are arming our enemies. The ISIS soldiers are paid for with U.S. cash. We left $1 billion there. They pay their soldiers with our money. They ride around in our Humvees and they point anti-tank weapons at us that we gave to the Islamic rebels. And I raised my hand in the committee and I said, this is insane. I said, this is going to backfire. I said, the great irony is we'll be back in a year fighting against our own weapons. What's going on now? We have to be doing something to defend against our own weapons. Maybe we should think before we act and not put weapons into the hands of our enemies. This goes on and on and on. Foreign aid. We don't have any money. We borrow $1 million a minute. We borrow money from China to send it to Pakistan. You know what they do in Pakistan? If you're a Christian, you can be put to death for being a critic of the state religion. Asia Bibi is on death row. She's a Christian. There's not many Christians left in Pakistan. She went to draw water from the well. The women of the village began beating her with sticks and stoning her. She was bleeding on the ground and they were beating her to death with sticks when the police finally came. And she thought, finally, relief, they're going to arrest my attackers. They arrested her because the women said she had been critical of the state religion. She's been on death row for 5 years. So I introduced in the Foreign Relations Committee, I introduced an amendment that said no money, no American taxpayer money, no U.S. tax dollars should go to any country that persecutes Christians. The vote was 18-2 against my amendment. Wow. Every Democrat and virtually every Republican voted to continue to send your money to countries that persecute Christians. How many countries do? There's at least 25. How did we define persecution? If you have the death penalty or life imprisonment for interfaith marriage, criticizing the state religion, or conversion. 25 countries have the death penalty for that, or life imprisonment, and you send your money to them. Not one person in South Carolina is for that, and yet you have a senator who loves it. You've got a senator who says, well, that's how we project power around the world. You don't project power from bankruptcy court. You don't project power from buying money. If we want to win again, we have to decide who we are. And if you want to be led by a reality TV show, my goodness, I'm going home. To win, we have to know who we are as a party and what we believe in. And I think somebody who has a different belief every year of their life, they've been on conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, they're not sure what they are, we are crazy to think we're going to change the direction of the country with that. That is completely insane. If we want to win, though, we have to decide what we believe in. I don't think we have to dilute what we believe in. Some of the national Republicans and the pundits say, well, let's just dilute what we believe in. We'll be Democrat light, and we'll win by being Democrat light. Hogwash. Nothing could be further from the truth. I think we have to be more boldly for what we are for. That means smaller constitutional government, balanced budgets, lower taxes. But it also means being a party that attracts new people. And I think you can have this liberty message and attract new people. I think young people are attracted by the message of privacy. The whole idea that the right to be left alone is a precious right. But I think also there are new people that are hungry for a different message. They're not entirely Republican, they're not entirely Democrat, but they're open to a new message. And I think this message is the message of the Bill of Rights, the entire Bill of Rights. You know, the Second Amendment, we've got most people in the party who believe in the Second Amendment. I'm a big supporter of it. If you don't believe me, come to my house unannounced. But we've got almost everybody knowing the Republican Party is the party of the Second Amendment. We've got to be also the party of the Fourth Amendment. You can't protect your Second Amendment unless you protect the Fourth Amendment. The Fifth and Sixth Amendment, I call these the Justice Amendments. This is that you get due process, that no one takes your property away from you through regulation or otherwise without just compensation, without due process. We should never, ever allow the government to take private property from one owner and give it to another owner. The Sixth Amendment says you have a right to a trial by jury. And you say, well, who could be against that? Who could possibly argue against the right to trial by jury? I had this debate on the Senate floor. They were passing legislation that said we would indefinitely detain or allow indefinite detention of an American citizen accused of a crime. And I'm having this debate, and I don't like to name names, with the senator from Arizona. And I said incredulously, I said, do you mean you would send an American citizen to Guantanamo Bay without a trial? Based on an accusation without a lawyer? And he said, yeah, if they're dangerous. I said, sort of begs the question, doesn't it? Who gets to decide who's dangerous and who's not?
Send him?
But I also thought of the time in the past when we got it wrong. Does anybody remember Richard Jewell?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody said Richard Jewell was the Olympic bomber. He looked guilty. He had glasses on. He was an introvert. He had a backpack on. He must have been guilty. He fit the profile. The only problem was he didn't do it. The media all said he did it. They had to pay him millions of dollars because they were wrong. But think about why you have the Bill of Rights. There have been times when we have got it wrong. Think about if Richard Jewell had been a black man in the South in 1920. What might have happened to him? We got things wrong for a long time in our history. Think of what we did to Japanese Americans when we incarcerated 100,000 of them just because of the way they looked. Said, oh, they're all guilty because they have the same color of skin as somebody who's attacking us. Think about the times we got it wrong. And then you think, well, that's not me, that's not me. Think about the characteristics of who they're telling you to describe right now. The characteristics of potential enemies of the country are, likes to pay in cash, has multiple guns in the house. I'm not going to ask for anybody to raise hands. Has changed the color of your hair, missing fingers, stains on your clothes. These are the characteristics of potential terrorists. And I say, by golly, if that's the characteristics of terrorists, I want my lawyer before they come to my house. The Sixth Amendment also says you have the right to a speedy trial. There was a young black man in the Bronx, 16 years old, was arrested and accused of a crime, and he spent 3 years in jail and was never tried. He was accused of a crime by somebody who wasn't even in the country legally. The accusation changed forms many times in the first few days. He was kept for 3 years, 2 years in solitary confinement. He tried to commit suicide. He was beaten by gangs in prison. He was beaten by the guards in prison. And finally, about a month ago, he did commit suicide. This shouldn't happen in America. And we are such a great party when it comes to the Second Amendment, and don't give up an iota of that. But what I'm here to tell you today is if we become a party that defends the Sixth Amendment, the right to a trial by jury, the right to be tried in a speedy trial, if we can defend the Sixth Amendment with the same vigor and the same passion as the Second Amendment, we're going to rock and roll, we're going to dominate, we're going to win America. I want to be part of that, and I hope you do too. Thank you.